Watch TV.
All right, so you guys sent in a ton of stuff about Trump's deportation policies.
Yeah.
And it's a topic that keeps coming up even now. So
Absolutely.
I think it's worth a deep dive to unpack what happened back then.
Totally.
We've got some excerpts here that look at the actual policies, the legal battles, all the impacts, criticisms, and even how they're remembered today.
That's a lot.
It is.
It's a little.
But we're going to try to understand how big these policies really were, what they meant here in the U.S. and for the rest of the world,
Yeah.
and what questions they left us with.
I think one of the most interesting things is how different these policies were
Oh, yeah.
from what came before.
You mean like compared to other presidents?
Exactly. It wasn't just that there were more deportations.
Oh, okay.
It was about who was being targeted.
So it wasn't just about undocumented immigrants who had committed crimes.
Right. It went way beyond that. The Trump administration basically said anyone who was here illegally could be deported.
Mhm.
And that's where the zero tolerance policy comes in. That meant even families who are asking for asylum at the border
Yeah.
could be separated.
That was the policy that was all over the news,
Yeah.
right? Where they were taking kids away from their parents and putting them in these detention centers.
Exactly.
Did the articles talk about what happened to those families afterward?
Yeah. They mentioned the huge psychological trauma those families went
It
through.
must have been awful.
It was human rights groups were really condemning it, and the courts eventually stepped in and blocked it.
Hmm.
But yeah, the research is still going on about the long-term impact on those kids.
So that's zero tolerance. Then there was that other one, Remain in Mexico.
Oh, yeah.
That one seemed to be all about pushing the problem onto other countries.
Yeah. Instead of letting people wait in the U.S. while their asylum cases were being decided, they made them stay in Mexico.
So what happened?
It caused huge problems in those Mexican border towns. The shelters were overflowing. Tons of people were living in really dangerous conditions.
So the impact wasn't just here in the U.S.
No, it's spread way beyond our borders.
Did other countries say anything about these policies? I mean, did the U.S. face any blowback?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. The international community was really critical.
In what way?
Well, the UN accused the U.S. of violating human rights.
Wow.
And then you had some countries using Trump's policies to justify their own stricter border controls.
Huh. So it's almost like what he was doing here gave them an excuse to crack down in their own countries?
Yeah, some people saw it that way. But there was a lot of pushback here at home, too.
Right. All those lawsuits trying to block the policies?
Exactly. Groups like the ACLU filed all these legal challenges.
Yeah.
And the courts ended up overturning a bunch of the policies either completely or partially.
And people were protesting all over the place, right?
Yeah, it was a big public outcry.
The articles also talk about sanctuary cities being a way to resist these policies.
Oh, Frank.
Can you remind me what those are?
So basically, a sanctuary city is a place where the local police don't help the federal government with immigration enforcement. They're trying to make things safer for undocumented immigrants by not going after them to deport them.
Makes sense. But it sounds like that caused a lot of tension between some cities and the federal government.
It definitely did.
So we've got all these ripples internationally, then pushback from the courts, from the public. It sounds like these policies really hurt the U.S.'s image abroad.
Yeah, for sure.
And they probably caused a lot of division here too, right?
Totally. There are a lot of different opinions about how it affected our global standing. But some people say it really damaged our relationships with some of our allies. And then here in the U.S., it definitely made the divisions in our society even deeper.
Right.
And created this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty for immigrants.
We've been talking about the politics and the legal stuff, but what about the human cost of all this?
Yeah.
You know, the personal side of it.
The articles really emphasized how much these policies hurt individuals and families.
Especially those families separated at the border.
Oh, definitely. That was just devastating. Those psychological scars are going to last a long time. And we saw more asylum seekers being detained, too.
Yeah.
Often in places with really bad conditions.
Didn't it cost a lot of money, too? All this enforcement and deportation?
Yeah. Billions of dollars went into beefing up border security and carrying out all those deportations. Critics were saying that money could have been used for other things, you know?
Like social programs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people were worried about what would happen to industries that rely on immigrant labor.
Like agriculture.
Right.
So these policies really touched everything, huh?
Yeah.
From global politics to families to the economy.
It's pretty amazing.
Where do things stand now? Didn't Biden reverse some of these policies when he came in?
He did. He got rid of some of the most controversial ones, like separating families.
Okay.
And he made it a priority to process those asylum claims. But the fight about how to handle immigration is still going on.
His policies are still being talked about, and they've really changed how we think about immigration in this country.
I think that's right. You know, it's important to remember that these policies didn't just come out of nowhere. They came from these deep tensions and anxieties that we have about national identity, about border security, about what the government should be doing in our lives.
It's a lot to think about. I mean, we covered so much today.
Yeah, we did.
That shift in who was being targeted, how it affected the whole world, all the legal battles, the way it divided people.
It's a lot.
It's clear that these policies had a huge impact on so many lives.
I think you're right. It's complicated. There aren't any easy answers.
No.
But knowing everything we know now, I think it's a good time to ask ourselves, how should we be shaping immigration policy in the future?
That's a really good question to leave everyone with. I think it's a conversation we all need to keep having. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
You bet.
The fear-mongering is not based on reality. Our Democratic colleagues would have the American people believe that an elderly grandmother down the street, a peaceful neighbor who would never hurt a fly and poses no threat to anyone, will have ICE banging on her door tomorrow morning.
Watch TV, promoting sustainable development.